Okay, so the UAP conversation is absolutely everywhere right now, right? But today, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to look past the what are they and are they real, and instead dig into how we're talking about all this. Because the story we're telling, well, it says a whole lot about us. You've heard this a million times, I'm sure. It's an issue of national security. It's the go-to line for whistleblowers, for experts, for officials. It makes the whole thing sound super serious and urgent. But, and this is the key, it's also a very, very specific way to frame the conversation. And it's not just the big phrases. Even the words themselves are super deliberate. I mean, think about it. Why did we go from UFO to UAP? As our source material points out, it's all about making it sound, well, less tinfoil hat and more Pentagon briefing. It's an attempt to clean it up, wrap it in military jargon, and pull it away from sci-fi and into the world of hard, serious data. Okay, so that brings up the big question. Why? Why this constant drumbeat of national security? The author we're looking at today argues this is no accident. There are some really deep reasons behind it. So let's get into them. First off, and this one's pretty straightforward, just look at who's talking. A lot of the big names, they're ex-military, they're former intelligence agents. Their entire careers were built on seeing the world in terms of threats, enemies, and adversaries. It's how they're wired. So of course that's the language they're going to use. It's what they know. But there's another layer to this, and it's a big one. You gotta remember, these folks are putting everything on the line. Their careers, their reputations. So if you want to get people in Washington to listen, you have to speak their language. And the language of power is the language of threats. It's a strategic move, really, to get a seat at the table. Okay, but this is where things get really interesting. Our author points out a huge, kind of ironic twist to all this. This whole strategy of using national security to get people to listen, it might actually be backfiring in a really profound way. And that leads us to this massive disconnect, right? I mean, if the whistleblowers are right, if we're talking about recovered craft, about non-human biologics, that is, without a doubt, the biggest story in human history. So why is the conversation still trapped in this tiny little box labeled national security? Shouldn't we be screaming from the rooftops with awe and wonder? So what's holding us back? The source material suggests it's not just some shadowy government cover-up. The obstacle, it's actually inside us. In a way, we're kind of playing along, because it's just so hard to let in a truth that completely shatters the story we tell ourselves about our place in the universe. And that right there, that's the central paradox of this whole thing. The very mindset we think is helping us get to the truth might be the one thing that's actually preventing us from seeing it. This chart here just lays it all out. It's a perfect loop. You see, when you're obsessed with enemies and threats, what does that do? It feeds secrecy. It creates a need-to-know culture. When you're fixated on control, you can't have openness. The two just don't mix. So by constantly shouting national security, the whistleblowers are, without even realizing it, propping up the very system of secrecy they're trying to tear down. And wow, does this next point hit hard? It really shows the danger here. The author asks this chilling question. What would happen if humanity, in our current state of mind, obsessed with enemies, with control, with competition, what if we suddenly got our hands on this incredible UAP technology? The analogy used is just, wow, it's stark, and it really makes you think. All right, so if this whole security mindset is just a symptom, then what's the actual disease? What's the root cause? This is where we get to the absolute heart of the argument. The author gives it a name, the story of separation. This is like the foundational software our entire civilization runs on. It's the core belief that you and I are these separate little beings, cut off from each other and from the world. And in that story, the only way to get ahead, the only way to survive is to compete with and control everything that is not you. And when you start to look for it, you see the consequences of this story everywhere. Think about it. If you're a separate self, all alone, you are always going to be insecure. It just automatically puts us into an us versus them mode. It's the reason scientists are terrified of being laughed at for studying this stuff. It's why so many people are afraid to speak out. It creates this fake consensus, really, just based on fear. And here's the kicker. This whole thing isn't really about UAPs at all. It's a mirror. It's a way for us to look at our entire operating system as a species, our politics, our economy, how we treat the planet, how we treat each other. You can see that same us versus them programming playing out absolutely everywhere you look.
So this all leads to the final, major takeaway from this analysis. What if the UAP phenomenon isn't just about giving us new data or new technology? What if it's giving us a choice?
This completely reframes the whole thing. It's not some external threat we need to manage. It's an internal challenge. It's like the universe is holding up a giant mirror and forcing us to take a long, hard look at the story we've been telling ourselves. And the question in that mirror is pretty simple, but it is massive. It's asking, okay, now that you have evidence that you might not be alone, now that you know your understanding of reality is probably wrong, who do you want to be? And the choice, when you lay it out like this, is incredibly stark. Do we just double down on the same old story, the one about separation, about competition, about fear? Or do we take a leap? Do we try to write a new story, one that's about connection, cooperation, and what the author calls interbeingness, this idea that we are all fundamentally connected? And here is the final kind of mind-blowing concept from our source material. Stories aren't just things we tell to describe reality. They create reality. The world we live in, the one we experience every day, is literally built on the foundation of the stories we believe.
So that's where we'll leave it, with this one big question. When you look at it this way, the whole UAP thing becomes less about what's up there and a lot more about what's in here. It suggests that maybe, just maybe, real disclosure won't come from forcing secrets out. Maybe it comes from changing our own story first. So the question for all of us is, what story are we going to choose to live in? What story are we going to make real?